I now have all members from the waiting room are in the meeting now.
We're recording and we are live.
Okay, welcome everyone. This is our Committee of Adjustment meeting number 1 for February 10th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Appreciate all of council here with us this evening. And of course, there is some background noise, so perhaps everyone can mute. We are hosting this meeting, not surprisingly, virtually. These continue to be COVID times. So with that in mind, I'm going to look for the adoption of the meeting agenda, I should say. At this point, we are and have invited members of the public wanting to attend to pre-register, and that is by emailing the clerk at northgrenville.on.ca. And if one wanted to make a deputation in relation to an item this evening, pre-registration was also required. So with those preliminary remarks, I'm actually going to call for disclosures of interest. I don't see that we have any minutes as part of the agenda this evening. Is that correct, Ms. Babcock-Cormier?
Sorry.
This is with respect to council meeting number 8. So the first item is the approval of the agenda for tonight.
Okay, so we are going to adopt the agenda as a first item. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'll call for that resolution then. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for the adoption of the agenda?
I'll move it.
Okay, and I see Councillor Strachan seconding. Thank you. Any questions or concerns about the agenda? We are hearing considerable background noise. I do need everyone to mute their laptops or their tablets, whatever they're on. That would be extremely helpful. Thank you. I'm going to call the question on the motion. All in favor, colleagues, please raise your hands. Thank you. Okay. So next on the agenda, as I see it, Ms. Babcock-Cormier, is disclosures of interest.
Yes,
is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and we are dealing with just one item on the agenda this evening because we are in the Committee of Adjustment meeting. Am I right about that?
We're actually in the council meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so
let me call up the other agenda. So I think I've called up the wrong agenda. So thank you for that correction. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So to that end, I'll clarify for my colleagues, council colleagues, that in fact our Committee of Adjustment meeting will follow. Is that the meeting we're currently in? Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Just give me 1 sec, colleagues, and I will pull up the right agenda, which will be of considerable assistance to myself as we move forward in our 2 meetings today. And I will correct, I'll correct the record. So we are now going into, or we are currently in the council meeting. So the council meeting we are hosting today that is being convened is council meeting number 8, Wednesday, February 10th at 6:30 p.m. We have adopted an agenda. I am looking for disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest, council colleagues, in regards to perceived or real financial benefit or loss for tonight's meeting? Scanning the room, seeing nothing. We'll carry on then. The next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. I believe, forgive me, I'm also having some technical difficulties when it comes to what's on the screen before me. As some of you are aware, council colleagues, or may recall, we have now adopted a consent agenda, and that is in regards to items that we believe are routine or no longer require further discussion, and therefore they are enacted in one motion. The exception to this rule, of course, is that any member may request that one or more items be pulled for discussion and voted on separately. So the three items that are proposed, colleagues, for the consent agenda this evening are Oxford Village, a draft plan extension, the appointment of building officials, and the appointment of committee of adjustment members. Of course, council colleagues, it is our prerogative and your prerogative, of course, to pull any item from the council agenda should you wish. So I'm looking for any feedback on the consent agenda this evening. Does any council member request removal of a consent agenda item? I see no comments to that effect. So once again, I'm just referring to my my resolutions package, and maybe Ms. Babcock Cormier, you can just read the resolution because I've lost it on the screen. Thank you.
The following consent agenda items be approved. 1, Oxford Village Draft Plan Extension, item H-2, appointment of building officials, item H-3, and appointment of committee of adjustment members, item H-4.
Great. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for those items? I see Councillor Barclay and Councillor Deputy Mayor McManaman. Thank you. So with that in mind, I'll call the question. All in favor of the consent agenda, please vote. Thank you. And thank you for creating some, I think, efficiencies for tonight's meeting. We certainly appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to move along then. And unfortunately, just due to my own technical challenges, I want to double check that we're going in the right direction here. We do have minutes of previous meeting, and that is the special council meeting of December 9th, 2021. We have minutes attached for that meeting. Council colleagues, can I have a mover and a seconder for discussion of those meetings, which took place again on December 9th?
Sorry, just to interject here, Your Worship, it's December 9th, 2020. I see an error, a typo that was made.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching that. And can I ask who moved and seconded that, please? I wasn't able to capture it. I have Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Strachan. Thank you. Okay. Any comments on these minutes, colleagues? They are fairly fulsome. Once again, we have heavy agendas when it comes to planning matters. Seeing none, I'm going to call the question then. All in favor, please. And I guess our one amendment is that we're going to adjust the year. So we'll ask for the motion to be approved as amended. All in favor, colleagues? Thank you. So with that in mind, I believe we are now moving to a public meeting, our first public meeting. But again, Ms. Babcock Cormier, yes, we are now going to hold our first public meeting. There are several this evening. So I will read the script that is mandated by the province in order that we start that particular meeting. So council will now hold a virtual public meeting to consider passing a bylaw to remove the H holding symbol from the zoning on the lands legally described as part of Lot 3, Concession 4, the former township of Oxford and Rideau, now the municipality of North Grenville, known locally as 378 Scotchline Road. This meeting is an opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If an appellant does not provide comments at this public meeting or written submissions before council adopts the proposed amendment, the local planning appeals tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any person who wishes further notice of the council's decision concerning this matter should give their contact details to Amy Martin, Director of Planning and Development, via email. Anyone wishing to ask a question during the public meeting can do so by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. When asking a question, please identify yourself and provide address and postal code. Are there people here for this public meeting? And if so, could you please acknowledge yourself through the raise hand feature on Zoom? Or perhaps Ms. Martin, you'll know who those individuals are, or Ms. Babcock Cormier.
I do not believe there's anybody in attendance at this time for this particular file.
Okay, I do see Larry's iPad. There are some individuals here, but I believe they are for the forthcoming meeting. Is that correct?
I believe so. If we could ask Larry's iPad to identify himself and for what meeting he's here for, as I don't have him registered.
Larry's iPad.
It's Kevin. Can you hear me?
Oh, it's Kevin and Larry. Okay. Welcome. Welcome, representatives from Kevlar.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Mr. iPad.
Okay, so I think everyone else is well known to you, clerk, so we'll move on then.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. So we are in the public meeting then, and I believe staff is going to provide a quick overview of the report.
That is correct. I believe there's a presentation. We'll just wait for Pollock to pull up the presentation.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, Pollock, if you could just advance one slide, please. So tonight, this matter that's before council is it's more of a housekeeping matter. So back in June of 2020, council amended the property at actually these 3 lots along Scotchline Road, including the lot with the star indicating its location, to reduce the setback from the principal railway. And as part of the zoning amendment, a holding was placed on the property to require a site plan agreement to address sound attenuation measures in the development. But also, if council recalls, there was concerns over grading and drainage in this area that was raised by a neighbor just to the east. So through the process of the site plan agreement, we prepared, and if Pollock can go to the next slide, please. The property owner prepared a master grading and drainage plan for the development of these 3 lots. So I know it's hard to see this level of detail, but each lot will have a swale that directs it to the roadside ditch. There was work done over the past year in the fall to try and clean out this ditch on the part of the municipality. A culvert was installed down the way on the private lane of a neighbor where there were some potential drainage concerns. So there's been some improvements done just through our natural, public works efforts. The neighbor who had concerns, I did reach out to let her know that a grading and drainage plan had been agreed to on the part of the municipality with the owner of the middle lot. And she was satisfied that that she didn't have any concerns. So she's more in particular concerned about the lot closest to her lot, which would be lot 3 on that master grading plan. So at this time, a site plan agreement has been entered into, which acknowledges the grading and drainage plan. And now we're at the point where we're just asking to lift the hold only on lot 2, being the middle lot. A separate holding bylaw lifting the holding for lots 1 and 3 will come forward once site plan agreements are negotiated for those lots. But at this time, no efforts have been made to bring any development proposal for those 2 lots. So tonight we're strictly just dealing with the lifting of the holding for that lot 2 middle lot. And as mentioned, staff are satisfied that they've met the condition to lift the holding. Thank you.
Great. So council colleagues, any questions in regards to this particular matter? Feels fairly straightforward. Are there any comments from the applicant? Is the applicant with us this evening, Ms. Martin?
No, they're not in attendance, but they have agreed to the terms of the site plan agreement and the master grading plan.
Okay. So with that in mind, if I have no members of council asking questions, and if the applicant is not here, then I will move on. Please be advised that any member of the public who should wish to provide written comment regarding the proposed bylaw can still do so after the public meeting is adjourned. Written comment can be received up until the bylaw is considered by council. It is intended that the bylaw will be brought forward for consideration on February 10th. I believe this is the 10th, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Martin?
That is correct.
Okay, so to that end, I think we are going then to move to consideration of that bylaw if there is no further comment. I will close the public meeting. Okay, so with that in mind, I'll look to a mover and a seconder for the following, and that is that council improve and enact bylaw 1121 to lift the holding provisions for 378 Scotch Line Road. Looking to council colleagues to move in second. Deputy Mayor and the seconder, please. Councillor Barclay, thank you. I will call a question on that motion. All in favor, please. Thank you. So that motion passes. So moving on, we have dealt with 378 Scotchline Road. And am I to proceed, Ms. Martin, to reference to the next public meeting for 32 Garrison Drive? Am I addressing that matter in this particular meeting?
That is correct. We have prepared a blurb just to address the deferral of that public meeting.
Thank you. So the public meeting originally scheduled for this evening regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 32 Garrison Drive has been deferred. The request to defer from both the applicant and staff will provide additional time to address the public concerns and develop an alternative solution regarding the location and placement of an accessory structure. Public notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act to advise the public as to a new public hearing date. Colleagues, are we good on that front? Good. Okay, so with that in mind, we've dealt then with Garrison, and I believe we are moving on to 7-9 Grenville Street. And we are now holding another public meeting in order to address this particular matter. Is that correct, Ms. Martin?
That is correct.
Okay, so council will now hold a virtual public meeting to consider an application for lands legally described as 7-9 Grenville Street from local commercial zone special exception C2-6 to residential first density zone special exception R1XX to recognize the primary use on the property as residential. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have. If an appellant does not provide comments at the public meeting or written submissions before council adopts the proposed amendment, the local planning appeal tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any person who wished further notice of the council's decision should give their full details to David Nanton, Planner 2, via email following adjournment. Council and contact info can be found on the notice of public meeting. Anyone wishing to ask a question during the public meeting can do so by using the raise hand feature on Zoom. When asking a question, please identify yourself and your address. Are there people here for this public meeting? And if so, could you acknowledge yourself through the raise hand feature on Zoom? Or Ms. Martin or Ms. Babcock-Cormier, are you aware of any individuals participating this evening?
I'm not aware of anyone participating with respect to this matter. Ms. Martin?
Okay.
That's correct. I'm not aware of anyone who would register to attend this portion of the meeting.
Okay, so I think we're going to hear from Mr. Nanton then in terms of a staff report.
Thank you. I will be providing a presentation on the application ZBA-15-20 for the property located at 7-9 Grenville Street this evening. Next slide, please. Shown on this slide is the subject property, which is located in the hamlet of Burritts Rapids, shown on the slide in red in the center of the slide itself. And the hamlet itself is in the northwestern boundary area of the municipality. Next slide, please. The subject lands shown here in red are located on the east side of Grenville Street, which is the main thoroughfare in the hamlet itself. The surrounding uses to the subject lands are predominantly residential. There's a community hall to the north, as well as lock stations that bookmark Grenville Street to the north and south. And residential uses are typically low-density single detached dwellings, and they are privately serviced. Next slide, please. Shown here is a subject lands, which show that they are developed currently with two adjacent abutting buildings, one being residential, that being the blue building, and one commercial building, which is the stone natural color there. The commercial building on the property accounts for 23% of the total square footage of the building development, and the residential component makes up the remaining 77%. Next slide, please. The application was submitted by the applicant to have the lands rezoned to recognize the primary use on the property being residential with a commercial component. The subject lands are designated hamlet on Schedule A of the official plan and are zone local commercial zone special exception, C2-6, according to our comprehensive zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed zoning amendment itself. And to speak to the requested zoning amendment, so the intent is to rezone the property from local commercial zone special exception to a residential first density special exception zone. What is shown here with the proposed zoning amendment is that the existing uses on the property are to be maintained and no additional development is proposed through the application. Existing setbacks and zone provisions currently on the site through the site-specific zoning are to remain, and this will maintain the consistent design and function of the property as it exists and functions today. And the amendment is deemed to be administrative in nature to change the zone category to recognize the primary use on the property being residential. The application was circulated to persons and agencies as required under the Planning Act. No letters of concern were brought forward for the application, and the RBCA and Health Unit stated no concern for the requested amendment. Next slide, please. It's the opinion of staff that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to amend the zoning from local commercial zone special exception to residential density zone, first density zone, pardon me, special exception, is consistent with the PPS, the United County of Leeds and Grenville's and North Grenville's official plan and the intent of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. Through maintaining the existing residential and commercial uses on the subject lands, the site-specific zoning will preserve the character of the hamlet. It is the recommendation of staff that council approve zoning bylaw amendment ZBA-15-20 to amend the zoning of the lands from local commercial zone special exception to residential first density zone special exception. Should you have any questions at this time, please provide them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Danton. So I can see that Councillor Barkley has a question, so I'll go to him right away. And I just wanted to confirm the applicant is with us this evening or not, Mr. Danton?
The applicant is not with us this evening.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. So I'll go to Councillor Barkley first. Thanks. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Councillor.
Just a question, if it's going from commercial with special exemption to include the residential towards residential with a special exemption to include commercial, it seems pretty straightforward, but I'm curious why someone would do that. Is there, do you have any inkling about the purpose of making that change?
So if I may, is my understanding that the intent of the application coming forward was that the long-term use of the property as a primary residence was challenging for financial situations under the zone category as a commercial primary use. So the intent of the application was to conform with the actual building envelope and the primary use as it's evolved over time.
So I guess it had property tax implications, and not to dig too deep into the reasons, but I'm curious because it seems like administratively nothing really has changed other than it's now residential with a commercial exception versus commercial with a residential exception. So
yes, and to speak to your question, it is truly administrative in nature. It is truly just a swapping of zone categories, but it's my understanding that the owner and applicant of the property was having issues obtaining an appropriate mortgage for the property as it existed, and the commercial zone was serving as a barrier.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And I see Councillor O'Sullivan, and I'm just scanning the screen for my other colleagues. So I only see Councillor O'Sullivan at this time. Go ahead, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify, so it's primarily residential. Are they using any commercial space on the property? And if it's not used as commercial at all, is it possible that it could be a secondary residence if that was ever a desire? And does zoning it residential first make it first density, make it difficult for them to have a secondary residence if there's space and they wanted to do that? Those are my questions.
Mr. Danton?
Through you, Mayor. To speak to the concerns that you brought up or the points of concern. So currently the smaller building is leased out, as I understand. I'm not sure the arrangements fully, but there is an operating commercial use and a tenant. I believe it's an equestrian focused storefront, retail in nature. And that's to be maintained through the process. So under the permitted uses, it's very clear that a retail outlet is to be maintained on the property. And in speaking with the owner and applicant, there's no intent to really redevelop the site or repurpose it at this time. It is truly just an administrative practice they're seeking. So it's not intended that the commercial use component of will be used for secondary accommodations at this time through this application.
Okay, thanks very much. I have no concerns.
My apologies, Your Worship, you're muted.
So I just want to alert council colleagues to some ongoing technical difficulties due to the fact that my entire computer seems to have reconfigured itself. Other comments from colleagues? Seeing none, I then am going to go back to our resolutions. And thank you for your patience this evening. I do hope to streamline my technology. This is a surprise how I'm having to navigate the screen this evening. So we've taken our questions from council. We see no members of the public. The applicant is not here. So at this time, I'm advising that any member of the public who should wish to provide written comments regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment can still do so after the public meeting is adjourned. Written comment can be received up until the zoning bylaw amendment is considered. However, I believe we are about to consider it. And it is intended that the zoning bylaw be brought forward during this meeting. So I will move now to close the public meeting unless I see any other comments from council. Seeing none, then I am going to look for a mover and a seconder, and I'll ask Ms. Babcock Cormier to read the motion for the matter in question.
The motion is, be it resolved that council approves zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-15-20 for the lands located at 7-9 Grenville Street, part of Lot 5, Concession 1, former Township of Oxford on Rideau, now the Municipality of North Grenville, to amend the zoning from local commercial zone special exception C2-6 to residential first density zone special exception to recognize the primary use on the property as residential.
Great, thank you. So do we have a mover and a seconder for that motion? I see Deputy Mayor and Councillor Strachian, thank you. And I'll look to final comments from council colleagues. Anything? Seeing nothing, then I will call the question. All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. That motion passes. We'll now move on to our third public meeting of this evening, and this is that council will now hold a virtual public meeting to consider a proposed official plan amendment application. The purpose of this application is to redesignate a portion of the lands located at 5870 County Road 19, part lot 29, concession 3, geographic town of Kemptville, now the Municipality of North Grenville, from highway commercial to residential to permit the development of 4 low-rise apartment buildings and associated parking amenities. These lands are subject of a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application and a site plan control application under the Planning Act. I must advise you that this meeting is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns in regards to the proposed official plan amendment. If an appellant does not provide comments at this public meeting or written submissions before council, the local planning appeal tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any persons who wish further notice of the council's decision concerning the matter should give their full name, address, and postal code to David Nanton, Planner 2, via email following adjournment. Anyone wishing to ask questions during the public meeting can do so by using the raise hand feature. Please identify yourself and your address if in fact you are asking a question. And we are looking to see if there are people here, in fact, for this public meeting, and Ms. Babcock Cormier is nodding her head. Who do we have this evening? If you could identify yourselves, if you're here for this particular public meeting, it would certainly be helpful to council and staff.
So I believe, that this is the majority of the attendance at this meeting are with respect to this particular matter. And we have, running down the list, Bria, I hope I pronounced that right, Aird, Barry Godfrey, I'm just running down Kevin's iPad, which is Kevin Mulligan, Ulrike Mueller, Barry Godfrey, Paul Black, who is the planner, and Udo Selitz. Udo Selitz is with Cogeco. So I'm not sure if I've missed anyone going down the list.
Okay. Has anyone not been recognized for this matter? I see Mr. Noseworthy. Are you here for the matter of the amendment, Mr. Noseworthy?
Mayor Peckford, can you put your hand up if you can hear me?
I can hear
Yes,
you.
okay, great, thank you. I just can't see the image here. I might have a question or two, so I just want to make sure that I'd be allowed to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you for recognizing yourself. Great value in that. So has everyone been recognized? Mr. Godfrey is also on the screen. Has Mr. Godfrey been recognized? Okay, so then I'm going to look to, is it Mr. Nanton who's doing the staff report? Okay, fire away, Mr. Nanton, thank you.
Thank you.
I can't get the picture.
So I'll be providing the presentation this evening on the official plan amendment application number OPA-01-20, submitted to accommodate the development of a residential development of 4 low-rise apartment buildings on the lands identified as 5870 County Road 19. Next slide, please. Shown in red on this slide, the subject lands at 5870 County Road 19 are currently vacant lands situated behind a large format commercial development with frontage onto County Road 43, anchored by the Giant Tiger at the civic address 2960-2970. The subject lands, if you look to the far east, feature split frontage, 28 meters of frontage onto County Road 19, running north-south, and then 77.5 meters of frontage onto Wellington Road. The total area of the site itself is 4.85 hectares. The lands are situated within Kemptville's urban service area and feature strong connections to the County Roads 19 and 43, the downtown core of Kemptville, Highway 416 to the east as well. The site also has linkages to neighboring and adjacent active transportation, such as the rail trail and future planned connections. Staying here on this slide, surrounding uses, as mentioned, include a large format commercial development just to the north, again anchored by a Giant Tiger. To the east of the site is a commercial development as well. This is anchored by a Starbucks and is currently being developed with a second phase at this time. South of the site is a residential subdivision comprised of single-family homes, all on municipal servicing. To the west of the subject lands is the Kemptville Retirement Living Facility, as well as the Kemptville Creek as we go further west. Next slide, please. To give some context, the subject lands were created through severance applications B102 through 104-19, as shown here. So this is just to give some context that these lands were removed from the northern commercial lands for this purpose itself, and this application, as well as other concurrent applications, were submitted in accordance to fulfill the conditions of the severance as well as accommodate the proposed residential development. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, a concurrent zoning bylaw amendment application has been submitted for the lands to rezone the lands from highway commercial to residential fourth density special exception holding, again to accommodate four low-rise apartment buildings. The specific relief and site-specific provisions required to accommodate the proposed development are to be brought forward to a subsequent public meeting. This is brought to everyone's attention as this evening's public meeting is intended to only address the official plan amendment itself, and that there will be a follow-up meeting with full circulation to residents and agencies with respect to a zoning amendment and site plan as well. Next slide, please. And just for some context in relation to the zoning and site plan coming forward, this is the conceptual site plan prepared on behalf of FOTEN for the development, which shows the preliminary location of the 4 apartment buildings just to the south of the large format commercial center, as well as north of the existing residential subdivision. Next slide, please. The official plan amendment application seeks to amend Schedule B of the official plan to have the subject lands designated from highway commercial to residential. Next slide. This slide itself shows the official plan land use designations, and outlined in red are the subject lands. The symbol over top of the subject lands and extending north is the highway commercial designation. And though not very clear on the slide, I concede, as you go immediately south of the site, you see that there is the residential land use designation. So the site itself is truly a transition between the existing large format commercial development to the north and the low density subdivision just to the south. Next slide, please. To speak to some of the applicable policies, Section 10.4 of the official plan provides policies for the highway commercial designation. This designation is intended to accommodate commercial establishments which rely on automobile traffic for business and accommodate uses which do not directly serve the public in some instances, but do provide employment opportunities such as offices and wholesale uses. Section 10.2 of the official plan provides policies for residential uses within the urban settlement area. A goal for these uses is to promote a mix of housing that will satisfy the municipal's projected housing needs. Objectives for residential uses in the settlement area include directing new residential development into appropriate areas based on available municipal services and compatibility with existing land use patterns. Residential uses that support the provision and choice of dwelling types so that a broad range of housing requirements can be satisfied, and encouraging infill residential development and intensification in areas where existing land uses will not be adversely affected. Next slide, please. It is the opinion of staff that the official plan amendment application to amend Schedule B to change the land use designation on the subject lands from highway commercial to residential is consistent with the PPS, the United Counties, and North Granville's official plan. Amending the land use designation on the subject lands will promote residential intensification, which serves as a transition between the commercial and residential uses in the urban serviced area. The amendment will permit the establishment of a multi-residential development which addresses housing needs for the community. It will not adversely affect the commercial potential along County Road 43 corridor. Next slide, please. Oh, my apologies, I must have missed one. Back one slide, please. It is the recommendation of staff that council approve official plan amendment number 01-20 to amend Schedule B of the official plan to change the land use designation for the subject lands from highway commercial to residential. Thank you, and I'm available for questions at this time.
Great. So just to be clear, thank you, Councillor Barclay. I believe that we certainly can go to questions of staff because we do have, I think, the applicant and representatives for the applicant. We can also ask questions of them. I'd like to just be clear about whether or not they also plan to make a presentation, or are they just here this evening for questions and concerns?
Mayor Peckford, thank you. We're mostly here to answer questions and speak to the project. I think David's presentation really covered the basics, so thank you.
Okay, perfect. So then with that in mind, I saw Councillor Barclay wanting to speak. Council colleagues, are there others? And then we'll go to members of the public. They have an equal opportunity this evening to ask any questions or express concerns. So Councillor Barclay, I'm going to you because I believe you may have a clarifying question about the staff report.
Yes, that's right. 2 questions, in fact. Thank you, Mr. Nanton, for the presentation. When you had the slide up that showed the different symbols, to the south there was residential and to the north was highway commercial. What does the symbol to the east represent? What's the zoning there?
Go ahead, Mr. Nanton. And you, I think, are muted.
Yes, thank you. No problems. I'm just having to pull that up to make sure I
And I
don't
will
miss.
recognize Councillor Sullivan just because her hand is up, but please answer Councillor Barkley's question.
So the kind of diamond pattern you're seeing to the east is the economic enterprise zone.
Okay,
So that zone category is again intended for commercial uses, similar to the colony development and the development we're seeing with the Starbucks Plaza.
so it's just a follow-up. What's the difference between highway commercial simply and enterprise zone in terms of zoning? Is there?
I think maybe a simple way to say it would be that the highway commercial is truly for the traveling public. We're thinking, Shoppers Drug Mart, Giant Tiger, gas stops, that kind of use. Economic enterprise has more of a breadth of uses that are intended, including kind of larger format commercial, semi-industrial uses that are
Okay.
permitted.
Yeah, final question, and I know it won't become relevant until we get a site plan, and that's in terms of the stormwater management. I note from one of the Google Earth images that there's a stormwater pond in the residential area to the south. Which way will do you have any idea where the legal outlet will be? Will it be to the east or the west? In other words, to the west to go into the south branch, or will it be east going into the hybrid vertical swale that runs beside Starbucks? Any indication of where that'll go?
So at this time, I did not prepare to speak to this at this meeting, but if the agents on behalf of the applicant wanted to speak to that, they're more than welcome to at this time.
Yeah, and again, I know we won't see that till site plan, but I'm just curious.
Yes, we are still working on the details of the stormwater, but right now the plan is to have the stormwater outlet to the existing pond in the West Fairway development.
To the west.
Right.
To the south.
I think you mean behind Forest Creek. There's a stormwater pond, right? That also has a walking path around it. Is that what we're speaking
Yes,
about?
that's right.
Okay.
I see. To the south. Okay. Thank
So
you.
And Bria, just to follow up, you're confident at this stage that given that you'll have 4 buildings, that you can redirect all that stormwater to the drainage pond with its current size?
Yes, that's right. We're looking right now at how to make sure that we have sufficient storage capacity on the site to have the appropriate flow volumes going out. So we are still working on that, but we're confident in that route, I believe.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Sullivan unless Councillor Barkley, you have a follow-up. Are we good? Okay, Councillor Sullivan, please.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to, if David could go back to the slide that showed the site plan, the preliminary site plan, because there was just it's a few other slides. That one, yes, the conceptual site plan. Behind building number 4, I guess, closest to County Road 19, if there's a large amount of land behind it and a group of trees, there was one concern about the amount of trees that would remain there. And I just wanted to confirm that those trees will remain as far as we know. I know this is not the actual site plan, but that was a concern. And the main thing I wanted to say too is that the residents of Forest Creek, which is the residential neighborhood behind or to the south, very much appreciated Kevlar coming and having a public meeting with the residents and expressing all their concerns and listening to all their concerns. It's been very, very proactive, and on behalf of those residents, I just wanted to express our appreciation. They certainly do look forward to seeing the detailed site plan when it's available and when it's coming forward. So I appreciate you staying in touch with us. So for the folks from Kevlar, if you wouldn't mind including us, including the Forest Creek Neighborhood Association when you have the site plans. Okay, thanks very much. And that was my only question and comment.
Okay. Are there other council colleagues that wish to speak or members of the public? I'll now call on members of the public. Is there anyone here who wishes to ask questions? So we have Mr. Noseworthy. Welcome, Mr. Noseworthy. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just two quick questions. Well, sorry, Robert Noseworthy, Kempville, K0G1J0.
Thank you.
Just for people that may not know on this call, I was actually the builder of the Forest Creek subdivision, the houses that are to the south of the proposed development. No objection to it, but I was wondering if it's a little, it may be too early, but if the applicant, if there is a definition of parkland, I can't make it out in the drawing. Someone was asking me from the subdivision, they still have my phone number and they were curious, will there parkland be involved in this particular project?
So who wishes to take that?
I can speak to the amenities that are that we're proposing on the land right now. There is no parkland dedication proposed, but I will say that it's our intention to provide a walking path along the rear of the property that can be used by residents of the neighborhood. And of course, there is also a generous amount of landscaped amenity space on the development primarily for residents of the development, but certainly that would be accessible to the public.
And I thought parkland dedication was a stipulation of every development. So I'm curious by your words, Bria, but I'll go to Councillor O'Sullivan first, and perhaps you can think about how to help us understand that process. Councillor O'Sullivan?
Thank you. If I recall correctly, I thought for sure that there was a playground or a small park area near or between I'm going to say apartment building number 1 and number 2 to the west side of the development. I was sure I saw parkland on there when I first saw the plans, the conceptual plans for this development. And I also see that there is a little walking path that connects to the easement that would connect through to West Arrow Way. So is there not a parkland already planned in there?
Bria, are you taking that?
Well, maybe I'll maybe start and then David can fill in as necessary. So there is a requirement for parkland dedication, but the municipality has a discretion to accept cash and LIA, which can be used to develop other parks. So it's been our understanding through the process that we're working through with staff that that's the preferable approach. And then thank you, Councillor Sullivan. We are looking at providing what will appear like a park, but will not actually be municipally owned or operated. So so there will be a park-like space, but not formally dedicated to the city.
Perhaps Mr. Nansen, you can help us. With up to 80 rental units, I'm actually surprised to hear that there isn't the kind of parkland dedication we might expect. I understand that there's green space that will be owned and operated by the developer, but that is distinct from parkland. So perhaps you can help us understand what you think the needs are, and maybe Kevin and Larry would also like to articulate what they see happening there, just given the fact that we will have many, many residents in an area that effectively otherwise is landlocked. Mr. Nanton?
Sure, thank you. So where I'll start off is that at this time, with the applicant and the agents as well as municipal staff, we're working to really make sure that the proposed development right now functions on the site at this time. So we're still working through some of the larger engineering matters related to stormwater management. making sure we have all of our safe access and egress for fire routes, the amount of accessible parking spaces in the right locations. Some of the more fundamental components are still being considered and ironed out at this time, which is why we didn't bring the zoning forward at this time. So it's anticipated that in the coming weeks and in advance of the subsequent public meeting to address the site plan as well as the zoning for the site, that matters related to how parkland and green space is going to be accommodated for the residents is recommended, and that's going to be brought forward to council at the next public meeting.
So I hear you saying TBD. That's what I'm hearing.
That's what I would I would stick to right now, just because I don't want to misspeak, and I know that we're just making sure that some of the larger stormwater management features are addressed, so we can, once we've established some of those engineering considerations, and we have a functioning site from that side of things, we can start getting into the details of landscape design, parkland, and those features. Yes, so to be determined.
Okay, I think certainly we've had experiences recently, and it's not specific to this development, where we built neighborhoods effectively or small subdivisions, which this is not. And there has been frustration among residents about a lack of dedicated green space. So I think you can appreciate the appetite for this conversation and look forward to hearing more. Anybody else want to speak on this matter? Mr. Noseworthy?
Just another question, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
The second question I received, again, the applicant may not be ready to answer this at this point, but what does low-rise apartment buildings mean? Does it mean 3-story, 4-story, or 5?
To speak to your question, Robert, the proposals for 4-story apartment units. I believe the total unit count is 84 units are proposed through the four buildings themselves.
Okay, so let me be more specific. Are all the buildings going to be 4 stories high? Are they anticipated at this point?
It is anticipated that they will all be 4 stories, correct?
That's fine. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you so much.
Problem.
Thank you, Mr. Noseworthy. Did I see Councillor Sullivan raising your hand again? Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you. So just for Kevin and Larry, just so that you know when you're considering the site plans, that if you could make considerations for active transportation in that, in terms of sidewalks and bicycle racks, things like that, because the active transportation committee would really want to see those things, and we'll be looking at the site plans. So just a little heads up that those are things that we would really like to see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm just doing a final call for any other member of the public or council colleagues who may wish to speak to this issue. Just want to make sure that I'm giving, of course, virtual meetings are always tough. I can't see people to the same extent. Many people have their cameras off. So again, I'm just making sure that we've given all members of the public and remaining members of council ample opportunity to ask questions at this critical stage. Ms. Babcock-Cormier, can see your
any hands up, Your Worship, on the on the list of attendees?
So you see no hands up, is that correct?
Okay.
Okay. So I know I should say I know parkland, active transportation, and affordable housing provisions will be discussed at a forthcoming meeting. The purpose of tonight is really to speak squarely to the amendment from commercial to residential. So colleagues, if there's nothing further for staff, then I will move to a motion, and I know we'll have lots of good discussion, and staff will have lots of good discussion with representatives of Kevlar and Kevlar themselves in the coming weeks. So to that end, Ms. Babcock-Cormier, I believe I'm reading the motion that council approves official plan amendment number 0120 to amend Schedule B of the official plan to change the land use designation for the subject lands from highway commercial to residential. And I am looking for a mover and a seconder for that motion. So I will
Yeah.
move there.
Sorry, apologies, Your Worship. You should probably close the public meeting first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I apologize. So we will close the public meeting then. So the public meeting closes at 7:29 p.m. Thank you. Skipped ahead in the resolution package. Now we've got a motion, and I see it was moved by Deputy Mayor, and I think seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Thank you. So we've had some discussion, colleagues. Anything further you wish to say at this time? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Bria, for being here alongside representatives from Kevlar, Kevin and Larry. And I think that completes this item on the agenda in terms of the official plan amendment. So I will move on then to other items on the agenda this evening. And I believe that we are now moving to yet another public meeting. And this is in regards to file number OPA 0121, or is that the one we've just finished, Heather?
No, I believe we're in OPA 0121. You're correct.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Council will now hold a virtual public meeting to consider a proposed official plan amendment. File OPA 0121 under Section 21 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 as amended, will be considered at this time. The purpose of the application is to add in provisions to the official plan to permit the establishment of a community planning permit system. This is your opportunity to voice any objections or concerns you may have. If an appellant does not provide comments at this public meeting or written submissions before council, the local planning appeal tribunal may refuse to consider their objections. Any person who wishes further notice of the council's decision this evening should provide name and address to the Director of Planning via email. Anyone wishing to ask questions during the public meeting can do so by using the raise hand. When asking a question, please identify yourself and provide your address and postal code for the clerk to record as part of the public record. So are there people here for this public meeting? And if so, could you acknowledge yourself? It seems that there aren't, Ms. Babcock Cormier, if that's what I'm reading correctly. So I'll go to Ms. Martin then, and she's going to provide the overview. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Peckford. Paula, could you please go to the next slide? So at the council meeting, it feels like forever ago, about a month ago, I want to say January 17th, I provided a key information report to council outlining the community planning permit system and what it is. So we're in the next stage of trying to get this project off the ground. So just for the benefit of those who didn't tune into that meeting, a community planning permit system is a planning tool that consolidates multiple planning applications into one process. So typically before, where you'd have to go through a zoning bylaw amendment or a minor variance, then you'd have to go through site plan control and all the legislative requirements that are tied to those processes, which would create quite a long and drawn out process. The community planning permit system creates a streamlined process for development approval with a 45-day review timeline. So it truncates the zoning requirements, the minor variances, and the site plans all into one approval process. I'm going to refer to it as a CPPS, just to keep it short. It establishes development standards at the front end of the process. As well, and it promotes creativity and flexibility within the development process. So what this tool will allow for the municipality to do is to set parameters for development and identify when certain things are outside of those parameters, potential conditions that could be placed upon the approval. Next slide, please. So it's not a short process to put one of these in place. Right now, we are at the start of the process, which is an official plan amendment. So in order for a municipality to enact a CPPS bylaw, we need to have implementing policies within our official plan. So our first step tonight is I'm going to walk you through just the contents of the official plan amendment. It's kind of really dry and high level items, so I apologize that you bear with me. And at the end, I'll talk about our steps moving forward in this process. Next slide, please. So where can a CPPS be applied? So the proposed official plan policy would permit a CPPS to be introduced municipal-wide or within a targeted area. So when you implement a CPPS bylaw, you also will need to identify where the CPPS will apply to, which it could be a municipal-wide one, or it can be targeted. So in this instance, we're working towards, in line with the DCAP recommendations, providing a CPPS bylaw for the downtown core. The official plan policy does not need to identify, as I said, any specific area. We will further define this within the bylaw. And nothing prevents a municipality from having multiple CPPSs in place or just one municipal-wide bylaw. Next slide, please. So what will the CPPS do? As mentioned, it defines the area in which a bylaw will apply. It will establish the permitted uses and discretionary uses. It establishes minimum and maximum development standards, such as setback and heights. It'll set out the internal review process, prescribe notification requirements on applications, set out the criteria for determining whether a use is permitted, describe the process for amending development permits, development agreements, and pre-existing site plans. It outlines conditions for approval that can be imposed on an application, as well as it sets out the scope and limitations of delegated approval authority. Next slide, please. A CPPS would not apply to any development that has a site plan approval in accordance with an approved site plan, any necessary repairs to an existing development, and the placement of portable classrooms on a school site if it was in existence on January 1st, 2007. Next slide, please. So within the CPPS, there's quite a few objectives that are recommended to be adopted. The objectives try to reach a broad category of some of the main issues that we're tackling with here in the municipality. So one of the objectives of the CPPS bylaw would be ensure that new development and redevelopment is in keeping with the existing built form of the community. This is particularly important when you're looking at development in an area that's already developed, like the downtown. So when you're introducing new development, ensuring that you have that conformity, and that's where guidelines in the CPPS bylaw will be beneficial in achieving that. Encouraging opportunities for the creation of affordable housing units, encouraging pedestrian connectivity and active transportation through the municipality, preserving cultural heritage resources, the protection of the natural environment, and streamlining the development approval process while providing certainty with respect to future uses in built form. So these objectives will need to be addressed within a CPPS bylaw when it is adopted. So it just provides that overarching objective policy. Next slide, please. The official plan policy will allow for amendments to a CPPS. So an amendment would be required in the case where there is a proposed use that doesn't conform or comply with any of the uses that are permitted within the CPPS. The requirements for an amendment would include an area study and other studies as identified within the CPPS, as well as details of public consultation and community engagement involving the municipality and the community impacted by the proposed amendment. So we're really putting the onus back on the developer when they're going outside of what a CPPS would permit to undertake that consultation ahead of their application for an amendment. Next slide, please. The CPPS will allow for delegated authority to occur as well. So in order for that to happen, we need to have policy within our official plan. The bylaw will provide further direction and definition as to what this will look like. So it would allow for approvals to happen by staff, whereas a more long drawn out process where you're continually bringing smaller matters back to council. Next slide, please. So I didn't include all the conditions of approval or we'd be here all night. This is the most lengthiest part of the proposed policy wording. So in order for a condition to be required in a CPPS bylaw, it needs to be defined within the CPPS official plan policy. So conditions could include study requirements such as stormwater management and engineering, landscaping requirements, financial securities, lighting requirements, conveyance of land and easements, provision of streetscape infrastructure. It's quite a detailed list within the proposed bylaw itself for the implementing policy. But what staff did was we took the most common items that we request the site plan process and adapted those into the policy proposed for the CPPS. Next slide, please. The CPPS will also be required when you enact a bylaw to have evaluation criteria. This is established through guidelines or standards by the municipality. So one benefit is that guidelines and standards are adopted over time by council. It might be targeted to a specific area or similar to engineering design standards. They're updated every so many years. So you're using more concurrent guidelines and standards. In this case, you could draft a CPPS bylaw to recognize the standard, as amended and as it's updated. Next slide, please. And the proposed official plan amendment also provides some direction in regards to application requirements. So when an individual is submitting an application, they'll need to provide massing and conceptual designs, relationship with adjacent buildings and the street and exterior areas, provision of interior walkways, stairs, and elevators where they are accessible from the street and to the public, matters relating to the exterior design of a building, including character, scale, and appearance, and design elements with any adjoining municipal road, including landscaping, curbing, street furniture, etc. So the goal of these requirements is to really provide that conceptual design as to how this building will interact, especially when we're looking at areas for redevelopment like our downtown. You get a better sense of how it's going to fit in with the existing landscape. And then the CPPS bylaw will require specific requirements for a complete application. So the bylaw itself will spell out when you're submitting an application, what it is exactly that you need to submit. And I think the big message here that I'm trying to drive home is that we're trying to create consistency within our processes, and that when developers are coming into an area where there is a CPPS bylaw, that they know exactly what to expect through the process. Part of that will come out through the pre-consultation process, but by the requirements that we establish within the bylaw itself. Next slide, please. So there is the ability for discretionary uses within a CPPS. So these are uses that might be similar to a use that is permitted within the bylaw. These might be subject to other additional conditions and submission requirements. As mentioned, it has to be similar to a use that's already permitted. And we can put criteria around it where there has to be no negative impact on adjoining properties, and it maintains the intent, principles, and policies of the official plan. It's in certain circumstances we might get a use that isn't clearly defined, but it could be easily related to another use. Next slide, please. So our next steps within this process is the official plan amendment will be sent to the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville. They are the approval authority should council approve the amendment tonight. Staff are in the process of drafting the CPPS bylaw. There's still work to be done on it before we can bring it to the required statutory open house. This is the community engagement piece. It'll more than likely be a virtual meeting given our COVID reality. After we hold the open house, then we have to hold our statutory public meeting. So similar to the official plan amendment meeting we're having tonight, I need to hold another session to walk through the CPPS bylaw, as well as explain, how did the public comment from the open house influence the provisions within the bylaw. Once the bylaw is passed, there is an appeal period, and once the appeal period is up, we can move forward with implementation. Next slide, please. So at this time, I will take questions. The more meat and potatoes of this process will come with the bylaw itself as to the details of what's required. The intent tonight is just to put the policy in place to allow for staff to go back and actually prepare and bring forward that bylaw for implementation at a future date. Thank you.
Okay. And Amy, to confirm, questions can be asked by council or members of the public, should there be any left.
Of course.
Right? This is a public meeting at this stage to give notice to the community of the intentions. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I will go to council first. I know that there was a fairly fulsome discussion just some weeks ago on this very matter. Certainly lots of effort, I think, has gone into kind of creating the right, and I should say the conducive policy framework to give developers a lot of clarity about what they can expect and the how, and also to give the community and the municipality flexibility. I had a quick question before going to council colleagues. I know this council has been fairly enthusiastic about not delegating authority, not because we don't have confidence in staff, but because we feel accountable to the community in terms of some of the major or minor developments that come our way. So how does the delegation of authority work? Or are you just speaking to a possible delegation of authority without specification at this instance?
So that will be more clearly defined in the bylaw itself, and it'll depend on the type of development and amendments versus, smaller deviations or discretionary uses. So the staff will put a proposal together as when the bylaw is being drafted, and we'll present that at that stage.
Okay, thanks. Council colleagues, other questions in regards to what Amy's presented? Okay, Councillor Barclay and the Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. This is a very exciting development to have our criteria and our development standards all in one basket that the development community can read and understand what they're getting into, and also the fact that it sort of streamlines and speeds up the process. I had one question, and that's regarding the objectives, and there was 7 or 8 objectives. How could this is just hypothetical? How could the CPPS be used to preserve heritage resources? That was one of the objectives, as I recall. Do you have an example of how it could be used in that kind of circumstance?
For sure. So the CPPS bylaw will have to address the objectives outlined within the official plan. So there'll be some goals and policies in that, in the bylaw itself. But the design guidelines are one of those elements in which we can help preserve our heritage features. So the CPPS bylaw itself will have to clearly define what those design guidelines are going to be. And I know in our downtown area, that's particularly important. We do have some older buildings, so preserving those features. So there could be requirements within the CPPS bylaw for any building that's designated, for heritage purposes to maintain those features.
Yep, go ahead.
Just to follow up. So the CPPS would also assist property owners who have heritage buildings in terms of bringing the building up to code, or how does it relate to the building department?
So when it comes to bringing buildings up to code, it would have to be a specific application that's made to do a renovation or to make a change to the building. And at that point, if you're in a CPPS bylaw area, depending on the nature of what's being proposed, there would be considerations and a permit approval required through the CPPS process, which would address those. If they're doing interior renovations, the bylaw is going to have to define at what point an approval is required and is not required when a building permit is being pulled. But that's something to take into consideration, is how do you address that?
So some flexibility could be extended to building code standards, or are we, the building code is the building code and there is no flexibility?
Well, the building code itself, and I apologize because I'm not an expert on the building code, but it would address matters of life safety and more of the engineering standards and the design of the building. The CPPS bylaw would be the tool in which you would address your design guidelines for heritage. They're kind of separate processes. In order to, you need your CPPS approval to get your building permit. So once you have your approval, then you can apply for your permit, and the approval could be tied, especially if it's a heritage building, to requirements to maintain those features. And so that the building department would have that on note, but it'd be the same as a site plan agreement, the way that the approval would be structured. They would list your requirements of what you need to maintain.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Just more of a comment for my council colleagues. I mean, I've been involved in this quite a bit, but this particular meeting is really just to get the ball rolling. We'll be speculating what might be in there, what might not be in there, and Amy and the staff will bring all that to us so we can have a fulsome debate on what can go in, what doesn't go in, and have all our questions answered, I'm sure, at that time when it's more clarity and actually written. I'm just to expedite the meeting. I know you guys want to ask a lot of questions about it, but we better expedite it. We do have a resident waiting in the wings for us to finish up. But just so you know, I'm not trying to rush anybody, but the actual conversation is going to be during the bylaw period, I believe, Amy. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct. So like I said, the meat and potatoes of probably all your questions that you're interested in when it comes to, interaction with the streetscape, heritage, pedestrian connectivity, design guidelines, those will be clearly defined within the bylaw itself. This is just the high level policy that's required in the official plan to allow for such bylaw to come forward.
Okay, Councillor Chartian.
I won't ask a question about the details. I'm just going to ask a question regarding the timeline for the next step. So when can we anticipate hearing back from yourself, Amy, and to be able to get into those meat and potatoes?
So we're looking at, I'm hoping to have a bulk of it drafted. So by mid-March, we could hold the open house. And then hopefully by April, no later than May, to have it before council, trying to get this up as fast as we can, recognizing that spring is coming. And there's probably lots of, can't assume, but I mean, once the snow and the frost is gone, there's a lot of renewed interest for development projects. So trying to get that in time for that, development period.
Thank you, Amy.
And to be clear, however, we are mandated to have a public meeting and to make sure that members of the public feel heard, or certainly have that opportunity to ask questions this evening. So obviously I see Mr. Noseworthy is still with us, Mr. Rivington, not sure about Mr. Rivington's status, but obviously we want to do justice to the public meeting. That being said, there aren't that many members of the public, but obviously part of the process here, Amy, to move towards that official plan amendment is making sure that there is a fulsome dialogue. Mr. Noseworthy, are you jumping in then?
No, I was just saying, yes, I'm still here.
Okay,
So
thank you. And I only look to one other member of the public. I'm so sorry, I don't know Mr. Rivington's status. I do have a question from Councillor O'Sullivan, so I'll take that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just very quickly, thank you for the presentation, Amy. And could you just confirm that the details will come to the Active Transportation Advisory Committee and the Accessibility Advisory Committee before it goes to council for final approval?
Great question.
Sorry, Mayor Pfeffer, did you want to say something?
Nope, go ahead.
That's the trouble with these virtual meetings, is that people try to certainly we can circulate the details of that. There will be an open house independent of the statutory public meeting that we're required to hold. So it might be worthwhile to circulate to those committees to let them, to make them aware that this is coming forward and to provide comment. I will say it will be a very comprehensive document. It won't be like a 5-pager. These are quite detailed bylaws. But by all means, if it's a matter of coming forward and providing a presentation, planning staff are open to that. But the open house opportunity will be there for all members, including committee members, to participate in.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, council colleagues, anything else you want to flag this evening? Seeing nothing? Okay, I think I have to close the public meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Babcock-Cormier? Okay, so I'm closing the public meeting at 7:53 p.m. And I believe, Ms. Babcock-Cormier, if it's okay with you, I'll have you read the motion just to keep it simple. I do want to thank staff. I know a lot of work has gone into this in a fairly short period. We've had some external supports, but Ms. Martin, thank you for actioning it. It's, I think, a critical piece of North Granville's evolution. It speaks to sustainable and smart development, right? That just doesn't happen in certain parts and not in others. So I think council is pretty excited about next steps. And I assume after this meeting, should our motion pass, then it gets punted to counties, who also who is the approval authority, approval agency, ultimately for the official plan amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So we'll provide the package to the counties for their review. And just to note, they were circulated ahead of time to review for any comment prior to the public meeting as well.
Okay. And then when would we expect the counties to deal with it?
I would hope expediently. I have expressed to the manager of planning that this is a priority project, but I can follow up with her to see what her timeline is once a package has been received. There's still the statutory 20-day appeal period, but there was no comments received from members of the public prior or up to this meeting. And at the end of the day, it's just implementing policy. We're not discussing one specific property. So I think that's to our benefit.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll go to Ms. Babcock Cormier for the motion, please. Thanks.
That council approves official plan amendment number 01-2021 to add policy into the municipal official plan to implement a community planning permit system, and council directs staff to prepare a community planning permit system for downtown Kemptville, and that council approve and enact bylaw 14-21, being a bylaw to adopt amendment number 4 to the official plan of the municipality of North Grenville.
Great. Mover, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Barkley. Any final comments, further comments, questions, council colleagues? Seeing none, then I will call the question. All in favor, please. Thank you. Okay. Good work, Ms. Martin. I think now we are, by virtue of our consent agenda, thank you, colleagues. I think we're now at the point of confirmation bylaw. Is that right, Ms. Cormier?
I just want to confirm there are no informational reports or correspondence.
Okay.
Next item is notice of motions.
Any notice of motion, colleagues? Seeing none?
All of the bylaws were already passed in the previous motions. And the next agenda item is the period for questions from the public and media relating to agenda items.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I don't believe we have members of the media here anymore. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, I don't know the status of Mr. Rivington. Is he here for the forthcoming subject matter?
He is here for the Committee of Adjustment.
Committee of Adjustment, that's what I thought. Okay, so we're going to assume, Mr. Rivington, you don't have any questions in regards to the matters discussed this evening? Okay, just a pregnant pause in case Mr. Rivington wanted to jump in there. I don't see anything. So with that in mind, I think we'll close the period for questions and comments from the media and the public, and you can move to confirmation bylaw. Is that correct, Ms. Babcock Cormier?
That's correct. That bylaw 16-21 to confirm the proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on February 10, 2021 be adopted and passed.
Okay, Councillor Strachan, will you move that, please? Thank you. Councillor O'Sullivan, will you second? Thank you. Okay. So I will call the question then. All in favor, council, of confirming tonight's proceedings? Thank you. We will move on then to a motion to adjourn. And I will look to Councillor Barkley and Councillor Strachan to move in second a motion to adjourn. Good. I'll call the question on adjournment. All in favor? Good. Okay. So I think the expectation is that we will move seamlessly into our Committee of Adjustment, colleagues, given that we have Mr. Rivington patiently waiting. And I understand that this matter is not likely complex, Ms. Martin, so we should be able to do this in a fairly efficient manner. Okay.